Boy planted a loaf of bread in the ground, but after a few minutes, the bread grew very tall. Eventually it became a bread tree. The boy's name was Mike. A few days ago, while playing, he was suddenly captured by a giant. It is said that giants are bloodthirsty, and they like to eat humans alive. But this giant was different. He's gentle and clumsy, not at all like the legend. The night had already fallen, and the giant was hungry. Mike took the giant to the kitchen. There was a lot of food in the kitchen. Mike picked up a giant tomato, and without hesitation, he fed it to the giant. Just as the giant was about to eat, suddenly there were footsteps outside. This man is the giant hunter. He smelled the giant's scent, so he followed him all the way. In the heat of the moment, Mike put a rag over the giant's head. When the hunter came to ask about it, Mike said he hadn't bathed in 6 months, so maybe the hunter smelled the wrong odor. He was reluctant to believe it, but the hunter turned around and left. For the giant's safety, Mike picked up the turnip and took the giant to the forest. And when he had eaten and drunk his fill, the giant told Mike that his home was in the sky. When he turned over in his sleep, he fell down because he was sleeping and turned over. Looking at the giant's sad face, Mike decided to find a way to send the giant home. And legend has it that there is a kind of magic bean. As long as it's planted in the soil, it will grow into a big tree. Then the giant could climb the tree and go home. Once the giant was settled, Mike had been secretly planning something at home. The next morning, he took the money and ran to the marketplace. He found a magician, hoping to buy magic beans from him, but the cunning wizard lied to Mike that he didn't have any magic beans, but he had a piece of magic bread, and it was even more powerful than the beans. And that's how it was. The simple Mike believed it, and bought a piece of fake bread with all his money. At the same time, last night's giant hunter noticed something strange. Seeing the big footprints in the village, he had already decided that the giant was nearby. This also put the village on alert. However, driven by curiosity, the giant sneaked out to see what was going on. Luckily, Mike found him in time. He told the giant to leave. By now, all the villagers were out in force to capture the giant. It was a moment of crisis. Mike took the giant and ran for his life. Because the giant is too big, he crashed into a billboard. He fainted on the spot. Mike rushed over to check on him. The villagers arrived just in time. They thought Mike had knocked down the giant, so they made him a hero. But when the giant was captured, the mayor tried to burn him. Mike felt sorry for the giant, so he tried to rescue the giant secretly, but the villagers found out. They thought that Mike was the giant's accomplice. They decided to burn Mike to death. Mother rushed to stop him, but the villagers wouldn't listen to her, and they tied her to the woodpile. As the fire was lit, the villagers cheered. They're so heartless. Before she died, the mother apologized to Mike for not being able to protect her son, and that's when the giant overheard their conversation, suddenly began to cry. So he missed his mom, too. Although the giant was a big and powerful man, but in the land of giants, he was just a child. Maybe he was too big. The giant cried like rain. His eyes are like two faucets. Seeing this scene, Jack rushed to stimulate the giant with his words. The giant cried again. The fire was extinguished in an instant. The villagers were celebrating. They didn't realize that the three had escaped. By the time they realized it, the fire had turned into a puff of white smoke. At the same time, Mike and the others fled to the countryside. Then Mike took out his magic bread. He was going to send the giant to the sky, but the giant was very angry when he saw what Mike did. He grabbed Mike and shoved him in his mouth. But in the end, he couldn't get it out of his mouth. Because of the long time together, the two of them had become a little affectionate, so they decided to give Mike a try. But after planting the bread, the three of them waited for a long time. There was no response. Mike realized that he had been duped. He was so frustrated, and that's when his mother told him about the real magic in the world, the will of the world's heart. With reverence, bread can grow into a tree. And then, Mike closed his eyes and prayed over and over again in his heart. He didn't expect that the next moment, a miraculous sight really appeared.